hello to my little friend. Hello passion fruits, it's your girl VH with another video. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would do a different kind of video because since I've been live streaming, I've been noticing that there are a lot of younger subscribers out there. And when people started asking me to do more owl videos, I did it to please my subscribers. But now, recently, there have been a lot of people asking me if I could do videos about eating disorders, anxiety, depression, and even bullying, because apparently there are quite a lot of subscribers suffering from mental illnesses, and they are asking for advice and just, some encouragement. And I have a lot of experience with eating disorders, anxiety, a lot of mental issues, and if I can help someone by making a video about that kind of stuff, then that will make my day. At least then my suffering hasn't been for nothing, If I have to suffer, I might as well make a video about it and eventually help someone. So let's get into the video. This video is for people who suffer from an eating disorder and who want to recover, but who might feel desperate and even hopeless. Because eating disorders will do that to you, and even when you decide to go in therapy and get a really good therapist, it's really hard and it can make you feel like you will never recover and there is just no hope left for you. Because recovering from an eating disorder takes a lot of courage, and you really have to be a warrior to be able to recover from it. And when I went into recovery, I thought, now I'm gonna get better and, in 3 months or so, I'll be fine. And the opposite happened. I felt like I was getting even worse, and, recovery didn't open the gates of heaven for me. It opened the gates of hell, then made me go straight through hell and back, and then straight through hell again. And then, I could see the gates of heaven, you know what I mean? And they are starting to open themselves for me, but I am not there yet either. So yeah, I'm going to make this video to give people a bit of hope, because there is hope out there. And the things that can make you really desperate is when you feel like you have an eating disorder, but the behaviors that you are doing because of your eating disorder, it seems like no one else with an eating disorder is displaying them or is suffering from that kind of behavior. It's like you're an alien, you're an eating disorder alien, and you're the only one who is doing certain things, and all the other people with eating disorders are struggling with other issues. So that can make you feel really alone, and that happened to me. And I was like, well, if I can't find anyone on YouTube who is suffering from the same things as I am, then how on earth am I going to find a solution to those kinds of problems? Because it seems like no one is having the same problems as I have, so I guess then there will be nobody out there who has found a solution to it. And it made me feel really alone and desperate and hopeless. So yeah, in this video I will discuss with you a few things that no one talks about. The first thing I want to talk about is atypical eating disorders, because everyone knows anorexia and everyone knows bulimia, but no one ever talks about atypical eating disorders. For a very long time, I was suffering from an eating disorder and I didn't even know it. I knew there was something wrong with me because I was binging so much. I was binging every day and I just couldn't stop eating. And I knew there was something wrong with me, but I didn't know what, because I didn't throw up my food, I didn't starve myself, and I wasn't underweight, I wasn't morbidly obese either. So I didn't even know I had an eating disorder, because when I looked up eating disorders on Google, I found anorexia, bulimia, but I didn't throw up, I didn't starve myself, and at the time I didn't even have an exercise addiction yet. So it never came to my mind that I could have a real eating disorder. And no one suspected me to have an eating disorder either, because I was always on the chubby side. So atypical eating disorders do exist. You know, there's anorexia, bulimia, and then there's B.E.D, which is short for binge eating disorder. Binge eating disorder is when you binge, but you do not try to make up for it later. So you do not exercise, you do not restrict your calories afterwards, and you don't throw up, you don't use any laxatives to make up for the damage you've done. Most of the time, people with binge eating disorder will become obese. So I do not have that either. I have said in earlier videos that I have it, but that's just because I didn't know that there was something like an atypical eating disorder. So a psychiatrist in, another city, I went to visit another psychiatrist once, and she told me, oh yeah, but you have an atypical eating disorder. Now, what is an atypical eating disorder? It's an eating disorder that can be defined as anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder. It's where you have eating disorder behavior that isn't that common, you have behaviors that isn't shared by most eating disorders patients. So that is why for a very long time I didn't realize I had an eating disorder, and it made me feel so alone. So I just want to tell you that you are not alone. Let's talk about some things I used to do when I was even worse, because I'm still not recovered at all. But luckily, I have made a lot of progress. So when I was at my worst, I was scared to drink water. I could go 2 weeks without drinking water. The only thing I would drink was a bit of coffee or tea, and that was it. I didn't drink any soda, any water, and even though rationally I knew that water doesn't make you fat, I still was afraid to drink water because I knew it would cause weight gain on the scale. And that has been a huge problem for me. I know a lot about nutrition and food and science in general. So rationally, I know all the facts, but my feelings don't follow. So when I eat half a kilo of broccoli, I know it won't make me fat rationally, but I will still have an anxiety attack because I know I now weigh half a kilo more on the scale. And that's a real struggle, because how do you cope with that if you have the knowledge but you can't somehow feel it? So I was afraid to drink water, and at my job in summer it would get really, really hot, and even when it was so hot that my bosses had to offer us free drinks because it was way too hot, I would refuse to drink even just a sip of water. But the thing was, this was excruciating. It was so hard because when it's so hot, your body craves water. You are so thirsty, and I was so afraid of weight gain that I didn't want to drink not even a sip of water. If I would break, if I would snap and I would have some water, I would feel the need to binge afterwards, because I felt like, oh, it's messed up anyway, I've screwed up anyway, I have failed, so now I'm going to weigh more on the scale. And I couldn't cope with that anxiety, and because of that anxiety I binged, which is completely ridiculous, because of course I knew if I would binge I would gain even more weight. But unfortunately, eating disorders aren't rational and logic. They have their own sick little logics. So I would binge, and the thing is, I couldn't binge at work, of course, because everyone would see, and second of all, it was forbidden to eat on the work floor. So it got to a point where I had to go to my boss and ask for a few hours off. But of course, that wasn't always possible. So I would be obliged to keep working, and it came to a point where I couldn't even focus on my job anymore. I would just count down the hours, the minutes, and it drove me mad. So I just wanted to go home and binge, and it felt like I would die if I wouldn't binge right away. And it was excruciating. The mental pain I felt until I could go home and binge was torture. It was real torture. And if you don't have an eating disorder yourself, then it's something you just won't understand. The pain, it wasn't physical, of course. I wasn't even hungry, you know, but the mental pain is excruciating. It's unbearable. So yeah, I would count down the hours and the minutes until I could go home and binge. So if you think you're the only one with certain weird struggles, then you're wrong. But people just don't talk about this enough. Another thing that I would struggle with was, you know, I used to binge every day, but I would eat so much crap. I would eat so unhealthy that my ankles would be swollen the next day. And because I would keep binging day after day after day, it would get worse and worse and worse. And they were so swollen, I swear to God, they were like this. And when I would press my finger into my leg, it would leave huge dents in the surface of my leg. So I would suffer from edema, which is just water, so fluids building up in your legs or your face or wherever. And it would hurt so bad because my legs would be so swollen. It wouldn't just be my ankles, it would also be my upper legs. And every time I wanted to take a step, the back of my leg was so tight. It felt so tight because it was so swollen that it would hurt. I wouldn't be able to make big steps anymore. It would hurt so bad, and I had to really persevere to get through the workday. And I was so ashamed. I was so afraid that people would notice, and they probably did, but they didn't say anything. They just looked sometimes. Sometimes they wouldn't notice, but people just didn't know in how much pain I was. And I persevered for years and years and years. For years and years, I would binge every night. And I would go to work, I would be on time every day, and it took a lot of strength and perseverance to do that because I would feel so sick at work. And then I would come home and I would do the exact same thing. I would binge again. And the next morning I would be a corpse. I felt like a zombie, and I would go to work and I would do my job, and I did my job very well. But, you know, yeah, the swollen limbs are a consequence of the crap you put in your body. And, you know, in all of the unhealthy foods you binge on, there's a lot of salt, a lot of fat, and that makes your body hold on to water. It's called water retention. I would gain 20 pounds in just 1 week, and I would be able to shed off 10 pounds in 1 week, and sometimes even 15 pounds in 2 weeks, even 20 pounds in just 2 weeks. So yeah, that's another thing I struggled with. And something else that I would do was I would be afraid to eat more than 99 grams per meal, because I knew that if I would eat 100 grams, it would cause 100 grams of weight gain on the scale. So I always weighed my food, and I just ate 99 grams of nuts, for example, or just a small piece of salmon, or just 3 little roses of broccoli. It was ridiculous. And for many years I wasn't able to overcome that fear. I will definitely make a next video in which I will explain to you how I was able to overcome that fear, because I knew I had to overcome the fear of eating more than 99 grams if I ever wanted to be able to stop binging. So I will definitely make a video about that in the future. If you want me to do that as fast as possible, then give this video a thumbs up, because you know, there's one thing I found out that really made me capable to overcome that fear. And it hasn't made me gain weight at all. On the contrary, I have lost so much weight since then, the healthy way, or at least the healthier way. So yeah, eating less than 100 grams per meal was something I did for a very long time. Another thing I really struggled with was dressing nicely as I was going through my eating disorder, because most of the time I was either chubby or fat. And I was so ashamed of my body that I dressed in huge robes, like huge robes. I wasn't able to dress elegantly because elegant clothing was just too tight for me. Even loose clothing, I still found that way too revealing. So I tried to hide my curves and my swollen limbs by dressing in huge t-shirts, huge unelegant robes, and that made it even more embarrassing because I didn't dress very elegantly. And people would notice and they would think that was just my style, but actually I wouldn't dress like that at all if I would just feel less ashamed about my body. And because I had a pretty high function where I worked, I was a team coach. You know, most team coaches, they dress up for their job because, you know, you're the boss. And I didn't do that, and it made people respect me less. And I really struggled with that. I tried to dress as elegantly as I could using way too large t-shirts and robes, but you know, it's impossible because most of the time I didn't find clothing that was wide enough for me to feel comfortable in. If it wasn't extremely wide, I still wouldn't feel comfortable. So yeah, it's impossible to dress nicely if you only feel comfortable in extremely wide clothing. So, you know, I wouldn't just be chubby or fat, I would be a fat person dressing really badly. So that just makes your appearance even worse. And I was aware of that, but I just couldn't get myself to dress more nicely because I would be irritated by my own fat. If I would wear something that was just a little less wide, I would be so irritated all day, and then at the end of the day I would binge just because I would feel even fatter because of the clothing that didn't feel wide enough. So it would cause me to binge even more if I tried to push my boundaries, you know, if I tried to come out of my comfort zone. So because of this, I often wore the same clothing. I would just wash the same clothing every day and make sure it was dry the following day, because I didn't find enough elegant white clothing to get me through the week. So people would probably also notice that I never washed my clothes or anything. I mean, I did wash my clothes every day, but you know, they saw me wearing the same clothing day after day after day, which also is kind of embarrassing. You know, it's impossible to hide your bloated belly in something elegant, because even clothing that is a bit wider would not be able to hide my swollen belly. Oftentimes people just think, oh, when she tells us that she looks pregnant after a binge, she's probably exaggerating. But no. When I binged, my belly would be like this. I would be in so much pain, and the next day my stomach would still be so swollen that it was just impossible to hide. So that's why I really needed that white clothing, because I was terrified someone would see my bloated stomach. It would be so embarrassing that, I wanted to binge, but because I had binged a few days in a row, I already looked so unhealthy, puffed and fat, that I was too ashamed to even go to the grocery store and get all of my binging food, It would get that embarrassing. A friend of mine once even didn't recognize me. He was cycling through the city and he saw me walking to the store, and he thought, oh, is that Elke? And then he was like, oh no, that's not her, because I had gained 20 pounds in just 1 week and he just didn't recognize me. It was that bad. Another thing I can remember, because apparently I have forgotten a lot of things that I did throughout the years, but something that was really bad was, I'm over it now, but there was a point where I was a food addict. I didn't just binge out of anxiety, but I was also addicted to really fatty, sugary foods. And I wanted to stop binging so badly, but I just couldn't. Because every time there would be leftovers, I wouldn't be able to resist them the next day. And it got to a point where every evening when I was done binging and I would go to bed, I would open every package of cookies and chips that was still, that was left over. I would open it, I would throw it in the garbage, and I would put something disgusting over it, like detergent or dirty tampons or whatever. So the next day I wouldn't be able to pick it out of the garbage again, because I did that, If I didn't put something gross on top of it, like extremely gross, I would just pick my leftovers out of the garbage the next day and eat them. I mean, who does that? That's disgusting. I was so addicted to food that I did that. So if you are ashamed of what you do when your eating disorder gets the best of you, trust me, you are not alone. And the extreme stuff that we do during our eating disorder, it isn't talked about enough, because people who don't suffer from an eating disorder, they have no idea how much we suffer. They just do not have a clue. A lot of people think I'm fine and I just stay at home because I'm in sick leave for 3 years now. They think I just stay at home because I'm lazy and I don't want to work, because I put happy pictures on Facebook and I look fine sometimes. Sometimes I even look really healthy and really good. And a lot of people think I'm just faking it, or people think I should, some people do believe I have an eating disorder, but they're like, they don't realize how much I still suffer, and therefore they think, you're healed enough, just go back to work, you'll be fine. You just gotta get over it. And the thing is, they don't know. They don't know how much we suffer. People at work had no idea how swollen my ankles were. They did not know that every step I took on the work floor was excruciating pain. Excruciating. They didn't know that I sometimes went mad inside of my head for hours and hours and wasn't able to focus on my job because I was just going through extreme torture in my head because I wanted to binge and I couldn't because I had to do my job. I had to finish my working day. People did not know how ashamed I felt. I always felt like everyone was looking at me. I always felt like everyone thought I was disgusting. People did not know that sometimes I wouldn't eat for 3 days. Luckily I don't do that anymore, but people, they didn't realize what was going on, and they just did not know. So I think these things should be talked about more, and you guys should not be ashamed for the things you do. Should you take responsibility to get better and not do those things anymore? Of course, but it's a mental illness and it's not your fault. In fact, just to give you some hope, people with eating disorders are incredibly strong people, because an eating disorder doesn't just happen. You did not just look at a magazine with models in it one day and decided, oh, I want to be like that, I'm just gonna create bulimia or anorexia, and yeah, that's what I want. No, that's not how things go. Those things might influence your body image and your self-esteem, but eating disorders go way deeper than that. They have very, very deep roots, and a lot of us are traumatized. A lot of people with eating disorders have been abused, either mentally, physically, sexually. A lot of people have gone through awful, awful, awful traumas, and that's still something a lot of people don't know about eating disorders. They just think people with an eating disorder are superficial, dumb, and people sometimes even think that we do it for attention, which is of course absolute nonsense. This is my first eating disorder video, so I feel like it's not one of my best videos, but I will make a lot of other eating disorder videos and they will get better, I promise. So I hope that sharing these few things with you, because there's a lot of other stuff I want to share with you, I just have to, go back in my mind and write everything down before I can make a video about it. But I hope that sharing these few things with you made you understand that you are not alone and there is always hope. But it can take a very long time before you find the solution to get better, because it is up to you to get better. And for a very, very long time I felt like I couldn't save myself, so someone else had to do it. But the thing is, there will come a time where you will have the strength to do what you need to do to get better. You will find out why you do the things you do. You will find out why you were so traumatized. You will find out what are the causes of your eating disorder. You will find everything out, but it does take a lot of time. But it is worth it, I promise you. It is worth it. And the pain does end at some point. Just try to think of it like this. If you have known excruciating pain, then the moment you will experience happiness, you will be even more grateful than other people who haven't gone through the kind of pain you have gone through. I can feel such extreme happiness sometimes because I have suffered so badly. Without pain, you don't know happiness, and I know this sounds really cheesy and ridiculous right now, but I promise you, there will be a time where you will feel better, and it will take a lot of courage, a lot of strength, a lot of tears, blood and sweat, but you will get there if you just don't give up. And I know I will get there too if I just don't give up. And it's not because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel right now that you will never reach the light. You will. just make sure you don't give up until you are able to see the light. For me, it seemed impossible for many years until it got to a point where I didn't want to live anymore. But fortunately, I did persevere, because if I would have just given up, then I would have never lived to feel that there is hope and that there is a chance to get better. So don't give up. Okay guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Feel free to comment down below what you thought of this video. Did it help you? Did it not help you? What kind of videos do you want to see in the future? And I hope you guys have a nice day. Bye!